bird's trying to come out. Come out. Come on then. Such an attention seeker. Let's put you back. We're doing a video. Go on. Good boy.
Hey!
Are you looking to get your first pet reptile and wondering how to set it up? What do you need? Should you go bioactive or not? Well, if you want to know a little bit more about that today, we'll discuss the pros and cons of bioactive setups. If that's something that interests you, then please stay tuned because that's coming up right after this. Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video and thanks for joining me. So like I said in today's intro, we're going to be discussing all things bioactive, some of the positives, some of the negatives of this type of hobby, as well as giving you some useful hints, tips, and show you the reasons why I keep them bioactive. I first wanted to start off by saying this isn't my way of saying this is the only way of keeping reptiles, and the way I do it is superior to anybody else. I know there's plenty of people out there with a lot of knowledge, years of experience who kept them in the more traditional sterile environments, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's the way you feel comfortable keeping your animals. This is not me saying this is the only way to do it. So I think before we kick off, what is a bioactive setup? So for me, the definition of that would be a contained environment which can naturally sustain itself, yet there's going to be some influence from you as a keeper, but generally the tank can take care of a lot of the things that you would normally have to take care of yourself. So as you can see in Castro's tank behind me is full of plants, and we planted a lot more in there in the last video, so I definitely recommend going to check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description. There's a lot of plants in there, so therefore they need substrate in order to survive and gain their nutrients from. As well as I water this tank down as obviously part of the plant process to keep the humidity up, and obviously water for Castro to drink. Now to keep this system healthy and alive, I need to add in things like springtails, wood lice, and we're going to add some of those in a little bit because I always try and top up the cultures in my existing tanks. Now this first is because Castro tends to eat the wood lice. The springtails not so much, but obviously the more springtails and cleanup crew you have in there, the better it'll take care of your environment. Now this takes care of any of the waste or mess that Castro makes after she's been to the toilet, so that makes my job a lot easier, keeps the environment a lot more sanitary, and obviously sustains the population of springtails and cleanup crew in the tank. Okay, so why are plants important in these sort of enclosures? So as you can see behind me, another heavily planted paludarium, and this houses my five-bellied toads. Now, we added plants into Castro's enclosure, like I said in one of the last videos, and I'm going to be adding some more in there today. Now, the reason I add plants into my enclosures is a couple of reasons. So first reason would be that it creates cover and that feeling of security for your animals. If they're always out in the open, then they can't feel very secure. Now that might not be applicable to every animal, but in general I know animals do appreciate cover. This also helps with keeping the healthy bioactive environment healthy and sustained. Obviously the plants take away a lot of the waste organics in the enclosure, as well as purifying the air, because as a lot of you will know, houseplants are really good for air, especially in enclosures like this where sometimes the air can become quite stagnant. We'll cover that a little bit later in the video. But not only do they do those things, as well as make the enclosure look absolutely beautiful like a piece of nature, they also help with humidity in the enclosure. When you water the plants down, obviously the substrate gets wet, there's water resting on the leaves, which a lot of the animals such as Castro will drink from. And this does help when it comes to things like shedding, and Castro is just going into shed today. So plenty of reasons why you want to keep plants. A lot of you might think the bioactive setups are just there to look nice, but this isn't the case. Do they look better? In my opinion, yes. But do they need to serve a purpose for your animals first and foremost? Definitely. So why are so many people changing to bioactive setups? Now, as an industry, it's massively grown over the last 20 so years. A lot more people are keeping reptiles. It's become a lot more common to see reptile shops, which is great, and a lot more things online as well. I think it's a lot easier for people to research these things. Like some of you will know, in the past, when I first kept snakes when I was about 11, you used to have to wait for books in the library, whereas we didn't have the internet, and it makes it so much easier. But with so much research being done, it does benefit our animals in the sense of the care levels that we come to know are always changing, and we have to strive to make sure we keep in better care of our animals. Now, the alternative to bioactive setups, like I mentioned in the beginning, are sort of sterile environments. You may have seen these sort of setups in the past. Now, a lot of breeders will use racks, and I'm not really going to go into that massively, which I know a lot of people don't agree with, but I understand from a commercial point of view that that's sometimes necessary. But what we need to remember as animal keepers, even with reptile rooms, we are not breeders, so we don't need to have to provide those sort of setups. We can afford to go bigger, better, and think of the enrichment for those animals rather than the cost. But I think before you decide on what sort of enclosure you want to provide your animal, I think the first thing you should think of is, what are you trying to achieve by going bioactive? Is it suitable for your animal? Is it suitable for you? Now, I know when I first got into the hobby, I probably wouldn't be comfortable getting into bioactive setups straight away, just because there's a lot to learn with the care of the animals, and you don't really learn as much as you can until you own that animal, have had some experience with it, and you can tell symptoms of it being ill, whether it's healthy, and if it's doing the things it should be doing. Now, if that is overwhelming for you, and a bioactive setup to learn about that as well on top, I'd recommend you go out and get a simpler setup. Make sure you give the best care you possibly can afford to your animal. Make sure you do plenty of research, and then sort of delve into these things over time. If it's not right for you, then it definitely won't be right for your animals. Skeptical people out there will say that people enjoy bioactive setups are only in it because it looks nicer, it's a lot prettier, and it isn't really good for your animals. Now, as you can already tell, I disagree with that point entirely. Do I think they look nicer than a sterile environment? Definitely. If you look at Bert's tank behind me, it doesn't look as nice. Pretty much all the plants are died off compared to some of these more lush setups. But on a separate note, Bert is going to be getting an upgrade and we're going to be doing out his tank in full in the next couple of weeks. So if you're not yet subscribed to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out. But for me, there's more to this than making something look pretty. If your animal isn't suited towards this type of setup, don't do it. If you don't understand it fully, then carry on doing research and consider doing it in the future. But as you can see behind me, Bert's tank isn't looking as great. The big ficus tree has pretty much died off. You can see him wandering around in the background. What are you doing? But it doesn't look as nice as some of these green, luscious setups, I will admit myself, but that isn't the reason why I do it. Now, one of the main things a lot of people will ask when it comes to any sort of setup is, how much does it cost? Now, that is one of the downsides of the bioactive setups. They can be a lot more expensive to set up initially, but like I said, you will reap the benefits of that in the future, which for me is massively worthwhile. But my advice to you would be is you don't have to go out and buy everything all at the same time. You can buy these things in stages, and if it's something that you really believe is better for your animal, then I think it's worth waiting, holding off a couple of months, a year, wherever it may be, to get the funds together to make the setup that you want for your animal. So for me, bioactive setups are the best way to go for me. Now I hope I've given you a little bit of information that you can go away and do some further research or make a decision on how you want to set your animal up. Now there's a wealth of information out there on Facebook groups, Instagram, YouTube, care sheets, reptile forums, you name it, there's something out there for you to find as much information as you can. Now, as always, I wouldn't recommend you just go watching my videos. There's plenty of other people out there doing similar things, and the more information you gather, the better equipped you'll be to making the right decisions and the right care steps for your animals. So for me, the positives outweigh the negatives in terms of whether a bioactive setup is more beneficial. Like I said, make sure you go into these things knowing what your animal needs to create that right environment. A bioactive setup doesn't have to be a tropical, humid environment. You can provide these sort of setups for more arid and desert animals. Never done it myself, so I'm not going to give you any advice on it, but there's plenty of information out there. But as always, I really appreciate you checking out my video today. For any new subscribers, first of all, hello and welcome to the channel. But as always, if you're new to this channel and this is the first video you're seeing, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And as always, if you're a regular viewer, do me a massive favor and give me that thumbs up. Drop me a comment to show YouTube you're enjoying this sort of content and allows me to make more videos like these. I hope you've enjoyed this topic today. On the topic of bioactive setups, I am going to be setting up Bert's bioactive enclosure, which is a 4x2 by 2 foot mesh enclosure. So if you're interested to see how I do that, and it's going to be the biggest build we've done to date, then make sure you are subscribed to check out that video. But I think that's enough of me waffling on for one day, and I'll see you in the next video. Gives them that might be no crap. Take 2. So I know a lot of skeptics out. No. Why are you doing? Right. No. No.